Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a Ranty McRanterson. I haven't done one in quite a while, but I got sent an email from a Fro reader basically saying my D7000 doesn't look good at 6400 ISO. It looks like there's too much grain and noise there, and I think that I have a bad camera. When are people going to realize that if you are going to shoot at 6400 ISO with just about any camera out there that you are going to see noise and or grain? Beyond that, if your exposure isn't proper, you're going to introduce more noise and grain. It comes down to fundamentals. If you understand the fundamentals of photography and stop worrying about the ISO and the grain and the noise and the things like that that may show up and just focus on getting your exposure right, you're going to have less issues. But let's look at this D7000 issue. I have a D7000. I personally did not shoot that thing over 4000 ISO because it did introduce more noise and or grain. But again, there's not a huge deal if you see noise or grain. Anybody that shot film knows that 3200 ISO looks like Swiss cheese. So what we see now in digital files when you're shooting at 6400 ISO, 12,800 and 22,500 or whatever some of the Canons and Nikons do, even 10,000 when I'm shooting that, it's just like, oh my God, I can do amazing things with them. And yeah, there's some noise there, but so what? So instead of just talking and ranting, let's take a look at the sample file that the person sent in. This is a shot from a Nikon D7000. They used a 11 millimeter, so the 10 to 16 millimeter, I'm assuming Tamron lens, the 2.8, and they're at 6400 ISO. First off, the picture is not that bad. Looking at it, I don't see too much wrong with it. Sure, when I zoom in 1:1, I see some noise and grain, but is that big of a deal? I just think that the exposure is not perfect. It doesn't need to be extremely perfect, but 1/100th of a second at 5.6 at 6400 ISO. We could drop the ISO to 3200 and drop the f-stop to f4. Because when you drop your 6400, one stop below that is 3200 ISO. And then to compensate for losing light, you have to open up your lens to let more light in. And in this case, we would go from 5.6 to f4. That is one stop. If you want to go even further, you can take the ISO to 1600. You can shoot at f2.8, and that's going to give you the same exposure as we are looking at right here. Now, it's not a terrible exposure, and it can be cleaned up pretty quick. Boom. There's some of that contrast. And let's take out some of this yellow, and we're almost there. And look, when you add clarity, people, it adds more noise and grain. But you know what? It doesn't even look that bad. So what? This is 6400 ISO. Look at this grain. It's noise, it's grain, so what? It's not a big deal. Get over this noise and grain thing and get to understanding the exposures better. Again, the fundamentals would tell you that you don't need to shoot this at 5.6. It just doesn't have to be that way. And remember, when you're shooting wide angle stuff like 11 or 14 or 16 millimeters, even at f2.8, just about everything is going to be in focus when you're shooting something this wide. So start to think. It's about understanding shooting more and the fundamentals. When you understand the exposure triangle, you're giving yourself a better way to get cleaner images. And just look at something like this. There was no reason to shoot at 6400 ISO when you have plenty of room with your aperture, and you could literally go to 1600 or even 3200 and there would be less noise or grain, in your opinion. But in my opinion, there's not a ton of noise and not a ton of grain. This is fine. I'm zoomed in 1:1. It's not a big deal. Stop pixel peeping. And look, we can go even further. I'm just going to stop it right there. That is a Ranty McRanterson. I hope it helps you out. I'm not yelling at this person. I am just raising my voice for everyone out there to hopefully start to get that it's all about the fundamentals more so than noise and grain. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya!